Well, we all been watching with great curiosity what's happening with ObamaCare, and recently announced that the employer mandate part of that bill or that law has been delayed for a year. Well, what does that mean? Well, our next guest, Bob Beauprez, he's a former dairy farmer, community banker, member of Congress. He's also former chairman of the Colorado Republican Party. The reason I said Oregon, because Bob, you and I have met. You probably don't remember it, but I was chairman of Oregon, and we have met at some of the RNC meetings. Bob also runs an e-magazine called The Line of Sight, a public policy and opinion resource. Really, it's a tremendous resource. You may want to check it out, and that's alineofsight.com. How you doing, my friend? Good to see you again.
I am doing well, Perry, and I very much remember our time on the National Committee together. It's nice to be speaking with you again.
Yeah, good to see you. Well, we have been we've been watching this Obama. Well, it's now law, and now the employer mandate being delayed. What does this mean, Bob?
Well, it means, I guess, to put it succinctly, exactly what Max Baucus, the Democrat senator who was one of the architects of this, predicted not too long ago. He said the implementation of Obamacare looked to him like it was going to be a train wreck.
Right.
And Perry, that's exactly what we're seeing. The Obama administration, I think, clearly did this delay of the employer mandate piece for political reasons. And the political reasons are that there's another election coming up. They've got a lot of Democrat senators and congressmen who are very nervous about going home and having to defend their vote for Obamacare. And this is one maneuver to kick the can down the road. I think, though, they may have been a little too clever by about half, because you've still got the individual mandate that's hanging out there, and delaying one and not the other complicates matters enormously. We can talk about that more if you want to. Mm-hmm. Plus, they raised a whole new issue, the president did. I can't find, I don't know that anybody else can find, in the Constitution, in federal law, the authority to do what the president just did. He defied a provision, a very specific provision of the law that carries his name. It's his legacy piece of legislation, the one he, of course, signed into law. He defied the very provisions of the law that he said was so all-fired important that we pass.
Well, boy, you hit on all the cylinders there. Obviously, it's political. He did do something that appears that, does he have the authority to do? Do you think the fortitude, at least within the speakership, to challenge his move to do this? Is there anything they can do to say, hey, wait a minute, this is law. You can't go in and preempt law?
Yeah, my friend Kevin Brady, I served with Kevin. He's a congressman from Texas. On Ways and Means, and I think it was just yesterday in a hearing, Kevin raised an interesting question. He said, aren't we also going, not setting aside for just a second the issue that the president didn't have the authority to do this,
right? But
now in doing it, he basically violated another provision of our rule of law, and that's the unequal treatment of citizens. Kevin Brady raises the issue of the individual mandate. How can you mandate that individuals have to comply with the law when businesses now apparently don't have to? I mean, it is a convoluted mess. And Perry, if it weren't so very serious and so economically damaging, it'd almost be comical, but it's really not funny. This is a very, very enormous problem. And now you've got, I mean, even Democrats that supported this thing, helped pass this thing, like Dick Durbin, the senator from Illinois.
Right.
It sounded just exasperated when he said, well, you Republicans, you ought to correct and improve this law. Well, the Republicans have been telling them for years that this is a mess.
All right. So let me come back to the effect of this move on small employers. Have you thought through that, what it might be for a small employer?
Well, it's a further confusion. That's been part of the problem, Perry, from the very beginning of the law. Mm-hmm. It exempts small businesses under 50 employers, but you have to provide insurance for for what they determine to be full-time employees. That's anybody, a new definition here as well, with 30 hours or more a week. And employers are scrambling now to comply with these provisions of the law. And we've got a whole new class of employers, not just small businesses, but they're calling them 49ers, people that are purposely trying to evade the law by employing 49 employees or less. In some cases, instead of expanding their business, starting a second business so they've got less than 49 employees in both, and then putting a whole bunch of people, instead of employing them full-time or maybe the 35, 36 hours, squeezing their workload down to 30 hours a week. It's having an enormous disincentive, a further turning down of the screws on an economy that's already struggling, disincenting jobs, cutting work weeks, cutting wages, and the compliance with this, Perry. I mean, there's thousands of pages of regulation that have already been written. It's just a nightmare.
Do you think, Bob, it's possible that this thing could be either repealed or defunded, or nullified?
Yeah, I think with the growing animosity, barely a third of the American public now support the law. And given that Obama just won re-election, when you think about only a third of the people support the law he pushed through, that's pretty telling. And the growing dissatisfaction with it, the anxiety among members of Congress, I think you're likely to see, Perry, if not a complete repeal, virtually a complete overhaul. And I think the easiest thing for them to do would be to scrap this whole law, start all over again. And John Barrasso, a guy I have a lot of respect for, senator from Wyoming, and a medical doctor himself, so he knows of what he speaks. That was exactly his reaction to Dick Durbin's request that Republicans fix it. He said, yeah, we'll fix it. We ought to repeal it and start all over step by step.
Well, on the House side, and you as being a former member of the House, where the purse strings are pretty much controlled, can't they just say, we're not going to put any money in there, we're just going to not fund it?
Yeah, I have to be honest, Perry. I'm very perplexed why the House hasn't done that. They've done kind of this endless parade of votes to heal Obamacare, but I don't know why they haven't simply pulled the purse strings. If there's a good explanation for that, I haven't heard it.
Yeah, well, I share your frustration. Back to the president. Is it possible we can get him on abuse of powers? I mean, he seems to be so imperialistic. Nobody's going after him. I don't know. He redefines Teflon, but man alive, we've got an abuse of powers here.
I don't think there's any doubt about it. On this issue and numerous other ones, he imposed the so-called DREAM Act, the provisions of it, basically violating our immigration laws by executive order. In his speech at Georgetown recently, he arrogantly said, I don't have time to sit around and wait for a vote from Congress. I'm just going to impose all these new environmental clean air regs and go to war with the coal industry just because I want to. At some point, I wish the House would do, I know it's politically risky, I know why they're hesitating to do it, but at some point the House has to consider, when has this president, when has this administration crossed the line and violated the provisions of the Constitution of the United States, and maybe even to the point of an impeachable offense?
I want to be respectful here, but it seems to be a little bit of a House leadership problem. We got Benghazi, you got IRS, you can list all the scandals. Now you can throw on this abuse of powers as it relates to extending the employer mandate for another year. Hey, wait a minute here. We got enough to go after this president, throw enough on the table to tie him up in knots. We're doing nothing.
No, and I think it's all out of fear of some sort of political backlash. And you and I saw that before when the House went after Bill Clinton, and there was a political backlash. And I'm sure that's what has Boehner and Cantor and Eric McCarthy and the rest, or Kevin McCarthy and the rest of them scared. But look, at some point they, just like a president, took an oath to uphold the Constitution. And when a high crime or misdemeanor has been committed, they've got an obligation to act. And not to confuse the subject, Perry, but there is now yet another issue that we could add to it. Yesterday, the Judicial Watch exposed evidence that from DOJ documents that the DOJ, our Department of Justice, was actually incentivizing, organizing, encouraging protest in this Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman case down in Florida right now, basically race baiting, and worse than that, exercising Department of Justice influence to deny a fair hearing and equal treatment among the law of a United States citizen, in this case, George Zimmerman. Absolutely unbelievably egregious, in my opinion. So the evidence against this administration, at least the serious concerns against this administration, are numerous and I think really outrageous and beg the question, at what point does the House have to act?
Well, I'm breathless. I mean, you add to that the other one we heard the other day from the State Department issuing visas for sex. And then you got the IRS exposing over 100,000 personal Social Security numbers. I mean, the list goes on, Bob. It's just frustrating. Hey, I appreciate you, my friend. I'm sorry we haven't had you on sooner, but I'm going to have you on more. And I want people to go to your blog, your website. That's alineofsight.com.
That's correct. Alineofsight.com. I write, and I've got over 100 contributors. We've been doing it for almost 7 years now, Perry. So thanks for the plug. I'd look forward to talking to you again.
All right. Blessings on you. Talk to you soon. And again, that is alineofsight.com. Boy, make that a resource on your computer. Go to it and support Bob and what he's doing. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.